Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, announcing the arrival of Honorable Dato Sri Abdullah bin Haji Ahmad Badawi, the Prime Minister of Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, the tarian Makan Sirih, Welcome Dance. Ladies and gentlemen, that was the Makan Sirih Malay dance specially and normally performed at ceremonies to welcome special guests. And you may like to know that the cases, the little boxes that they were carrying contains the sirih leaf, which is normally offered to guests to start a meeting or as you arrive for discussions in true Malay tradition. So that was specially for you who are here in beautiful Malaysia for this assembly. Honorable Minister, Honorable Prime Minister, I beg your pardon, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, kindly rise for the national anthem. Thank you. You may take your seats now. Ladies and gentlemen, the Aipa song.
For friendship and mutual cooperation, regional peace and prosperity, ASEAN parliamentarians form Aipa, Aipa, conceived in Jakarta, nurtured in Kuala Lumpur, Manila, Singapore and Bangkok, Bandar Sri Begawan, Hanoi, Phnom Vientiane and Yangon. With great expectations, Aipa, ASEAN, ASEAN, Parliament. For friendship and mutual cooperation, regional peace and prosperity, ASEAN parliamentarians form Aipa, Aipa, conceived in Jakarta, nurtured in Kuala Lumpur, Manila, Singapore and Bangkok, Bandar Sri Begawan, Hanoi, Phnom Vientiane and Yangon. With great expectations, Aipa, ASEAN, ASEAN, Parliament.
That was the Malaysian National Choir with the Aipa song. Terima kasih. Thank you. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh and good morning. Honorable Datuk Sri Abdullah bin Haji Ahmad Badawi, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, His Excellency Tan Sri Datuk Sri Diraja Ramli bin Ngah Talib, President of the ASEAN Inter-Parliamentary Assembly, Aipa, and Speaker of the House of Representatives of Malaysia, His Excellency Tan Sri Datuk Sri Dr. Abdul Hamid bin Pawante, President of the Senate of Malaysia, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Datuk Muhammad Yusof bin Zain, Aipa Secretary General, Honorable Heads of Delegations and Honorable Delegates, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the opening ceremony of the 28th General Assembly of the ASEAN Inter-Parliamentary Assembly here in Kuala Lumpur. To begin the program, it's our pleasure to call upon His Excellency Tan Sri Datuk Sri Diraja Ramli bin Talib, President of the ASEAN Inter-Parliamentary Assembly and also Speaker of the House of Representatives of Malaysia, to deliver the welcome address.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. His Excellency, the Honorable Datuk Sri Abdullah bin Haji Ahmad Badawi, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Excellencies, Head of Delegates and Speakers from Member States, Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, PDR, the Philippines, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, and delegates from Malaysia. And special observers, Brunei Darussalam and Myanmar, His Excellency Tan Sri Hamid, Dr. Hamid Pawante, the President of Senate Malaysia, and His Excellency Dr. Sri Nazri Tan Sri Abdul Aziz, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, observer countries, Australia, Canada, China, the European Union, Japan, and Korea, fellow parliamentarians, members of this auspicious gathering. I feel privileged to be standing here before you and to welcome everyone present this morning, from among Aipa member states and from among honored guests of Malaysia, to this 28th Aipa General Meeting. To members of ASEAN Inter-Parliamentary Assembly, or Aipa, and to the guests of our country, your participation in this event is a double honor to us, and I hope a double honor for you too, because not only do we get to be hosts to you in conjunction with the Assembly's debut appearance as Aipa, from previous nomenclature, AIPO, but also to share with you the joy of commemorating the 50th anniversary of Malaysia's nationhood. What better way to celebrate this than the presence of the Prime Minister himself? Thank you, sir, for officiating our ceremony. Under such chance setting, and bearing in mind the significance of Malaysia's Golden Jubilee, which falls on the 31st of August 28th, Aipa General Assembly will inevitably go down in history as among the more momentous events, not only for ASEAN and Aipa, but also for Malaysia, that seal off and strengthen the crevices in our past towards making a reality of our dream of an ASEAN community. It is indeed fortuitous for our assembly here is preceded by historic events, the proposed signing of a new ASEAN Charter, which we hope to do in Singapore later this year. Hopefully, will further empower our resolve to move in tandem with the aspiration of our founding fathers to see an ASEAN that exists as a common entity, as aptly illustrated in the theme of the 28th Aipa General Assembly, ASEAN Community, the People's Community. This 28th General Assembly of Aipa is a crossroads of sorts that seeks to aid towards the process of materializing a people-oriented ASEAN, as advocated by none other than the Honorable Datuk Sri Abdullah Haji Ahmad Badawi, our Prime Minister. At the outset, at the outset of the 11th ASEAN Summit in 2005. For our Prime Minister, ASEAN must never become elitist. It must be people-centered and take ASEAN back where it really belongs. That is, with the people of ASEAN. He reiterates that we must erase the perception that ASEAN is all about meetings between political leaders and governmental officials, or that it is of particular interest only to the business community. It is opportune that we are gathered here today and on subsequent days to make the difference in making ASEAN differently better through discourses and dialogues from the perspective of parliamentarians that we are, the nexus between society and government, and thus optimize our role as truly the people's representatives. This General Assembly is in fact such a lifting forum for us to be the voices of the peoples to whom we owe our services and commitment to better their lots and to enhance the sense of well-being as ordinary members of the ASEAN community. Hence, it is vital for Aipa, for this organization, to focus on bringing ASEAN to the people through accomplishing shared challenges, through the manifestation of mutual aspiration, and through reaching a common destiny, all of which are achievable and doable if we remain steadfast in prescribing to the essence of the vision and mission of the people-centered ASEAN. The founding regional parliamentarians were determined that more common efforts must be taken to give concrete substance to regional legislatures' friendship in meeting the challenges of developing their respective societies in this modern age. They were also convinced that the strength of ASEAN emanates from the roots of each society, and that more cooperation among the respective legislatures would result in greater participation by the peoples of ASEAN states. The regional legislature realized the need for concerted regional global efforts to respond to these challenges with the hope of building a sustainable peace and promoting community building, striving for greater economic cooperation and increasing political stability in the region, will eventually pave the way for opportunities to strengthen regional cooperative endeavors. Thereby, in embracing the spirit of ASEAN, they established an ASEAN Inter-Parliamentary Organization to promote closer parliamentary cooperation among the ASEAN member states, which should be seen as a partnership to achieve greater heights in years to come for the betterment of the people of this region. Ladies and gentlemen, Aipa is an inspiration and a symbol of the region's freedom, its notion of democracy, and its concept of diplomacy. The establishment of Aipa was inspired by the spirit of regional solidarity to strive for common interests and motivated by the numerous developments taking place at that time, whether in the ASEAN region, in the Pacific, or in the world in general. It is stated in the aims and objectives of the statutes that in view of the increasingly extensive and complex global issues, there must be closer friendship and cooperation in various areas aimed at resolving problems affecting the Southeast Asian region for the promotion of peace, stability, and prosperity. 30 years into the establishment of this organization, it is reassuring to see Aipa moving forward. For the last 30 years, ours has been the only regional organization for parliamentarians of ASEAN to work together and exchange views on issues affecting our region. I would like to reiterate the importance of revisiting our thoughts of Aipa's strength, which have been collectively developed over the last 30 years. What better way to do this than through this forum that marks the 30th anniversary of Aipa? We should be ready to intensify dialogue among regional legislative bodies and not only at the General Assemblies, but at the committee level to discuss issues of common interest for the betterment of the people. With ASEAN new focus and resolve, especially the emphasis on ASEAN community, the people's community, Aipa must reposition itself. It must address the growing challenges and opportunities of regional integration. We should not allow decades of thwarted ambitions and inadequate returns for past efforts to derail us from a shared vision for a future in a united region. I strongly believe that a more coherent system of consultation between Aipa and the ASEAN Secretariat can be established, with Aipa having its own permanent Secretary General now. I would like to suggest to the ASEAN Secretariat to seriously consider a permanent mechanism for consultation and coordination, and also explore the possibility to involve Aipa more systematically in their ongoing programs and action plans, especially in the coming discussion as regards the amendment to Aipa, to ASEAN statutes. The Aipa member states are certainly looking forward for constructive and long-term collaboration between the two organizations. There is a need to strengthen and complement the various ASEAN integration processes through the joint promotion of specific development programs and projects between Aipa and ASEAN. Parliamentary democracy is undoubtedly crucial in resolving issues that pertain to the international community. This impels national parliamentarians to make the most of the opportunities at engaging in parliamentary diplomacy to address regional concerns, and thus work together towards international peace and stability. Legislative diplomats, which alludes to parliamentarians, are deemed the framework of diplomacy as they provide the window towards enhancing international relations through close networking, and subsequently assist states and parliamentarians alike to ride the tide of future challenges. Efforts towards a more mature regionalism must forge ahead. Hopefully, the ASEAN Charter will be signed in Singapore towards the end of this year. There is an urgent need for some ASEAN decisions to have the character of community law, and not merely of regional political declarations. Implicit in this is the need for two preconditions to be fulfilled. The first is that these decisions must be essentially within the field of integration process. The second is that they must derive their legal authority from the national law of each member state. It will take a long while for ASEAN to develop a community, and then the role of Aipa in the mold of the European Parliament. Community building is undeniably a process that takes time, effort, and resolve. Nevertheless, we should continually remind ourselves that community building is a process. We shall never languish nor spare any effort until we achieve our noble vision of building an ASEAN community, a people's community. My humble appeal to you is to march on. Let's together work towards building a people-oriented community for a better ASEAN tomorrow. It is our dream to see ASEAN as a shining example of a cohesive, common regional community that parallels the present European Union, but in the mold of our own, that fulfills the demand and needs of ASEAN. I hope today we can collectively send our signals to show joint determination and to work towards the day when we can say ASEAN and Aipa has truly come of age. A day when peoples of Southeast Asia believe that they are part of a common community and heritage. Before I end my speech, allow me to take this opportunity to thank and congratulate all the delegates because your presence here today further reiterates Aipa's aim to promote cooperation among member countries since 1977. After 30 years, I sincerely think we must work harder to ensure that relevance of this organization is in promoting peace, stability, and prosperity in this region. To delegates of observer countries, Australia, Canada, China, the European Union, Japan, and Korea, our heartfelt appreciation to your attendance and participation in this meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, the President of Aipa. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure and honor that we now invite Honorable Datuk Sri Abdullah bin Haji Ahmad Badawi, the Prime Minister of Malaysia, to deliver his keynote address. Dengan segala hormatnya, dipersilakan.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Ramli Ngah Talib, President of the ASEAN Inter-Parliamentary Assembly. Yang Berhormat Tan Sri Dr. Abdul Hamid Pawanteh, President of the Dewan Negara Malaysia. Honorable speakers and heads of delegations, honorable ministers and delegates, Your Excellencies, distinguished observers, ladies and gentlemen. First, let me wish all of you selamat datang, very warm welcome to Malaysia, especially to all the distinguished delegates from other ASEAN countries. Malaysia is indeed very honored to have this privilege of being host to the 28th General Assembly of the ASEAN Inter-Parliamentary Assembly, or Aipa. This is a debut event for this assembly under the new identity of the changing its name from Aipa, from Aipo to Aipa. I'm more familiar with Aipo. I've been very active for many years in Aipo as a parliamentary secretary and as deputy minister. When I was promoted to minister, the speaker said, I think it's about time to make way for somebody else. I believe this change of name reflects the dynamic changes taking place in the workings of your assembly as an important institution in a changing ASEAN. The times are changing because we are now on the threshold of transforming ASEAN as an association of regional countries into an ASEAN community of nations. The objective for the transformation is to make ASEAN more effective in keeping the peace and stability of the region and more dynamic in supporting the efforts of its member countries to bring prosperity to their respective peoples. Indeed, the time has arrived for bringing ASEAN and the organization closer to the people. To be a true community, the ASEAN community must be a people-centered body. It is timely that Aipa should also be focusing on activities and programs that would bring ASEAN closer to the people. Ladies and gentlemen, the member states of ASEAN are now actively putting the finishing touches to the blueprint of a project which shall stand out as one of the most important documents in ASEAN history. I am referring to the ASEAN Charter, which hopefully shall be adopted by the members of ASEAN in the near future. As such, it is important that the activities of Aipa move in tandem with the progress towards the adoption of the ASEAN Charter. I strongly believe that the adoption of an ASEAN Charter would rejuvenate ASEAN and reaffirm our commitment to the ideals upon which it was founded. The ASEAN Charter will lend our regional organization a legal personality and thus afford its programs and projects the prospects of greater legitimacy in the context of the law, both national and international. I am also convinced that the Charter will be a landmark constitutional document embodying fundamental principles, goals, objectives, and structures of ASEAN cooperation, which will be capable of meeting the needs of the forthcoming ASEAN community. I do believe that the ASEAN Charter, once adopted, will facilitate and accelerate the formation of the ASEAN community, This is because the concept of an ASEAN community will then become very much part of the ASEAN lexicon. It is our hope that the ASEAN Charter will assist in implementing three fundamental principles of living as a community. First, all members must refrain from taking any action which violates community rules. Second, community decisions must be made enforceable. Third, a common set of community values must be developed and adhered to. To that effect, Malaysia would always assume a constructive role every step of the way, through means and measures, through processes and procedures that will culminate in the creation of a dynamic community within an equally dynamic and fast-growing Asia. In fact, the theme of this year's celebration of ASEAN Day on the 8th of August 2007 was One ASEAN at the Heart of Dynamic Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, for us in Malaysia, ASEAN has been for a long time the cornerstone of the country's foreign policy, especially so vis-à-vis the linkages we forged with our neighbors in the region. It is heartening indeed that in advancing the ASEAN grouping towards a community which shares common values and strategic objectives, the ASEAN leaders have given due recognition to the time-tested principles enshrined in the Treaty of Amity and Cooperation of 1976. ASEAN will thus be able to strengthen its unity based on commonalities without sacrificing the individuality of each member state as guaranteed by that treaty. Even more inspiring is the fact that the ASEAN Vision of 2020 clearly articulates the leaders' vision of an ASEAN which exemplifies, and I quote, a concert of Southeast Asian nations, outward-looking, living in peace, stability, and prosperity, bonded together in partnership, in dynamic development, and in a community of caring societies, unquote. For most of us here, we would also recall the significance of the Cebu Declaration of 2007 entitled Towards One Caring and Sharing Community. We cited the need to reduce poverty, protect the rights of children and women, improve education, and cherish the environment, leading to closer integration by the year 2015. This effort at community building will, in due time, translate into an amalgam of cooperation which, God willing, will create a convergence of values through collective understanding of the need to realize a people-centered ASEAN. Members of Parliament, being representatives of the people, are those best placed to carry out these tasks in various ways. That is why Aipa is equally poised to play an important role in the process of ASEAN community building. Ladies and gentlemen, it is noteworthy that the 12th ASEAN Summit in Cebu recognized parliamentarians as important stakeholders in the ASEAN enterprise, in line with the goal of accomplishing a people-centered ASEAN. In this context, the Aipa is undoubtedly an appropriate platform to bring together people, especially regional parliamentarians, to strengthen cooperation within ASEAN. Ladies and gentlemen, Malaysia is fully committed to the strengthening of ASEAN as a regional organization. That is why Malaysia will make all efforts to contribute to keeping the timetable for bringing into being by the year 2015 the ASEAN Security Community, the ASEAN Economic Community, and the ASEAN Social Cultural Community. These three communities will make up the overarching ASEAN community of nations. However, we have to accept the truth that community building is a long-term process. We cannot establish a community simply by signing a single treaty. A community has to be brought into being by a process of evolving and nurturing. We must first strengthen the common attributes which all members must subscribe to. However, diversity should be allowed and cherished as our strength. We must work hard to free ourselves from the animosities of the past. There must be good relations between member states at a bilateral level. A community is only as good as the quality of the relationships that exist amongst its members. And it goes without saying that parliamentarians can play a viable role as second-track institutions in strengthening the diplomatic relations between members of the community. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm aware that the idea of establishing an ASEAN Parliament has been mooted in the past assemblies of Aipa, perhaps based on the model of the European Parliament. At this juncture, I can only say that all significant discoveries start as dreams in the minds of men and women of vision. We may or may not live to see our dreams materialize, but if the objective is worthy of our efforts, we should not be deterred by carrying the idea forward. The ASEAN Parliament may yet be a forum that will come into existence after the process of regional integration has sufficiently matured. A supranational system of governance modeled after Europe is undoubtedly too grand a scheme to conceptualize at this stage of our development. We could perhaps more modestly aim to develop Aipa into a forum which can effectively channel public opinion of common interest to all the people of ASEAN. While it is important that we prepare ourselves for the future, we should also strengthen the cooperation now already in place. Therefore, Aipa should move along and keep in line with other developments taking place in ASEAN. Where appropriate, Aipa should play its part to help bring into reality the ASEAN community as scheduled. Ladies and gentlemen, after 40 years, ASEAN has now arrived at a critical juncture. On one hand, it is imbued with ideas and ideals to sustain itself as a regional body, endowed with the drive and the clout to share a common future and to speak with one voice. On the other hand, it has to keep tabs on its performance in all spheres of cooperation to maintain its relevance in a futuristic setting. The least we could do, and this is where Aipa can effectively contribute, is to sustain our commitment to ensure the relevance of ASEAN to its member states. We shall look nowhere but forward. We shall celebrate our differences, yet speak no other way but with one voice. We shall strive for nothing less than attaining superior economic cooperation, and we shall work towards enhancing political stability in our region. Only then will we be able to ensure greater opportunities for everyone in Southeast Asia through strengthened cooperation, through strengthened cooperative endeavors mutually beneficial to all, to the widening of possibilities and enhancement of people-centeredness in ASEAN. The concept of 10 nations, one community is certainly not an improbability. With that, and with the grace of God, it now gives me great pleasure to declare open the 28th Aipa General Assembly, and I wish all of you success in your deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister. We'd like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister to remain on stage, and for this, can we invite His Excellency Tan Sri Dr. Sri Raja Ramling Talib, as well as His Excellency Tan Sri Dr. Sri Dr. Abdul Hamid Pawante, to accompany the Honorable Prime Minister of Malaysia, who will now strike the gavel 3 times to mark the official opening of the 28th General Assembly of Aipa. The Honorable Prime Minister will now strike the gavel 3 times. Dipersilakan. There you are, ladies and gentlemen. The 28th General Assembly of the ASEAN Interparliamentary Assembly is now officially open. There you are, ladies and gentlemen. The 20th General Assembly of Aipa is now officially open. Thank you, Honorable Prime Minister of Malaysia. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this ceremony here this morning. Once again, we wish to thank the Prime Minister of Malaysia, Honorable Datuk Seri Abdullah bin Haji Ahmad Badawi, for honoring us with his presence and for declaring this assembly open. We do hope and we will work, no doubt, towards having a good General Assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, we'd now like to invite the Honorable Prime Minister of Malaysia to launch the Aipa stem just outside this hall at the foyer to mark the, in conjunction with Aipa's 30th anniversary, the Aipa corporate stem, and this will be followed by a photo session with heads of delegations and observers, and thereafter refreshments. And ladies and gentlemen, you're also cordially invited to witness the event outside. Dengan segala hormatnya, dipersilakan. Ladies and gentlemen, the President will now accompany the Honorable Prime Minister to the launch of the stem just outside. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please take note that the first plenary session will begin at 11. Thank you.